All right, how's it going, everybody? So hopefully you've been through both of the origami paper tutorials where you will have created, well, not even created, just follow the instructions to put together this paper phone stand as well as the paper wallet. I don't have one of the paper wallets in front of me. I think that you might have found I'm not sure which one you may have found a bit more difficult to put together, but um, they're both examples of technology, right? According to our definition for this class and the standards out there in school, any technology is something that people create in order to solve problems. Now, problems are just people's needs and wants, and those are relative, right? And I think that if you were asked to answer in class, well, what do you think the need or the want was that begat this technology? You'd probably say something like, I need a stand to hold my phone, or I need something that can allow me to operate hands-free but still see my phone. So this is the technology, that's the problem, the need, or the wants that it solves. And if you look at the design brief, you can see here that there's a background statement, a problem statement, and then the next two sections of the design brief are the requirements and the constraints. So for all intents and purposes, this is the type of document, this is a best practice for design-based activities if they're part of curriculum, right? However, you may find, well, I think you will find that a design brief is a great thing to have a student create even before they start working on a project. It helps them clearly define the scope of the project, clearly define the needs and wants of whoever that this thing is for, whoever has the problem that the thing they want to create solves or addresses. And it's always a good starting point, I think, even before a student were to come down and use the plastic printer. Oh, can I use the plastic printer to print something? Sure. Do you have a design brief for it? What do I have to do? Well, you're gonna have to write down what the problem is or the need or the want that you have that necessitates you using the 3D printer. And you have to tell me ahead of time, what are the requirements for this thing that you're printing out? What does it have to be able to do? Whose needs and wants does it have to meet? How big does it have to be? How much material can it use, etc. So when we look at the components of a design brief structurally, right, we have a background, and that's supposed to be some scenario or some way to contextualize what you're about to do into a real world problem, especially if maybe on some curriculum and the problem that they're working on is not something that students could really go out there and do in the real world. But the problem is still representation of needs and wants. So the background is supposed to be some persuasive pitch that explains some situation and makes the reader care or think it's worthwhile to keep moving after the design brief and start the design process. When I say persuasive, I just mean that it has components to it that make up any good persuasive writing, or like ethos, logos, and pathos. What makes you the authority on the subject? Ethos. Logos. What are facts and statistics to support my claim? And pathos. How can you affect my feelings or my attitudes or my emotions or change my belief about something? That's a good background paragraph. Next part of the design brief here is the problem. So the problem should just be a very simply stated statement that summarizes the issue at hand. It doesn't tell you what you need to create to solve it. It doesn't lay out any of those parameters. That's requirements and constraints. But the problem is just a simple boiled down statement that summarizes the background. And just for the sake of mentioning it while we have you here, a background statement. This is just a paragraph, and that's because this design challenge we're about to do here, you're going to do this twice. You're going to do this once for the phone stand and once for the paper wallet. You'll follow the exact same design brief, except when it comes to the wallet, it's not going to be holding a phone. You're going to use the same requirements down there, and the idea is that the same constraints. And the idea will be that the wallet that you have, this design's okay, but it's not good enough for some demographic out there. And your job is to target that demographic, figure out their needs and wants, combine them with the requirements here in this challenge around the design brief, and develop a workable solution, a functional prototype, a functional prototype. So let's take a look at these. Oh yeah, so about the background. Point I was making is that some design challenges are something that maybe takes, could take a couple days or a couple weeks or a couple months, depending on how the scope and sequence of them in a classroom or in a makerspace, whatever. But if it is for curriculum and you have a design brief, but it's some activity that takes multiple days, the design brief doesn't have to be the background or introduction to the problem, as we say in the steps of the design look, doesn't have to be a paragraph. It could be a 2 days of investigations or interviews or firsthand experience with something, or reading a story where there's a problem in the story, like you may in elementary school. A lot of good storybooks in elementary school mix real science with some real world issues or problems out there. And just like if you are from a science background, just like there's supposed to be some hook that starts with a phenomena out there, some phenomena in the natural world that I don't understand, and so it could be described as a discrepant event. There's a discrepancy between how I think the world works and what I just saw, like elephant toothpaste. When they take two little cups of something, and then when they mix them together, those two parts make this giant thing pop out. In science, we usually drive things with, or in other areas of humanity, we drive things with a question. Right? There's a question, an essential question that drives my inquiry. You could just put that hand in hand with the essential question and then an essential problem, right? So a question about how something is what it is out there in the natural world or in the human design world, and then I have a problem, which is a representation of some people, demographic. Demographic could be you. Demographic could be all women. A demographic could be any grouping of people that you can define by some similar characteristics, right? So taking those people's needs and wants for how something can be changed out there in the world. I guess if we're changing something that exists, we're innovating. If we're creating a solution to a problem and no one's ever created a solution to it before, it could be called an invention. Nonetheless, to get back to just this task at hand, these two design challenges you're going to do. Again, there's one design brief here, explains the phone stand. Just sub in wallet when you do the wallet. Follow the same design brief, do the same type of the same requirements and constraints. All right, so to look. But again, for these two design challenges, you are not going to have to work through a full design process. Like, we're not going to have you keep documentation. You don't have to necessarily follow a sequence of steps or a design loop or a design process. You're welcome to, but we're not going to be measuring and assessing that. We're not going to be looking at any of your documentation or paperwork. There's no requirements for that. Just want you to go through the act of creating something to solve a real world problem, right? So usually we like to suggest that you find a demographic out there that you can relate to or that you know well. Maybe you're part of that demographic. But the idea being that if you understand the demographics needs and wants, and you understand the problem really well, then it's much easier to start to come up with potential solutions, right? And so in this situation, you are being told that there in the background here is that for the phone stand, the 21st century has become an environment where the telephone is no longer simply for making calls. Smartphones have emerged from various retailers and service providers, allowing for the end user to take part in the endless number of activities from the palm of their hand. In many cases, people are rarely using their smartphone for that archaic tradition of making a phone call. Smartphones have solidified themselves as necessities in the lives of human beings from various ages, walks of life, and social groups. Demographics. Numerous companies have taken this opportunity to jump into the smartphone accessory pool by offering gadgets galore that will make using your smartphone more enjoyable and productive experience. So the problem that we're putting out here in this design brief is that Cell phone market is huge. There's all these reasons you'd want to make a better phone stand. And this is so generic, right? This is so generic. It's not really hitting a specific demographic, right? You could say, oh, the demographics, people who watch Netflix and they want a hands-free. That's huge. You're trying to find a more narrowly defined demographic that has their own needs and wants. And if they were to use this, it wouldn't be good enough for them. It would fall short for them. So you might want to spend some time playing around with your device, this and the wallet, and maybe even give it to other people to let them try it out. I mean, how deep you want to go with this is up to you, but the recommendation is that you spend a full hour engaged in the design, in your own design process, where all you have to come out with at the end is the functional prototype. Do the same thing, another full hour of time spent on the wallet. Right? In the end, you'll have two finished devices, and then you will be asked to respond to some questions in the reflections that will kind of synthesize the readings with this experience. You can also draw upon your own previous experiences. But remember, we have some people in class here who maybe use design challenges all the time as part of their class, and other people who have never even heard of a design challenge, right? So again, we're not focusing on the steps of the design process or any type of documentation. You do things your way and just try to follow the design brief as closely as possible to arrive at the best solution that you can. Now, a couple of things here. The next two parts of the design brief are the requirements and the constraints. So requirements, it's almost a universal language here. Sometimes people say criteria, but requirements is where you start to give students statements about, hey, when this thing you make later is done, how are we going to know if it solves the problem? It's going to meet the requirements. Requirements shouldn't have subjective terms in them or wishy-washy terms like make something better, improve it. You want to try to make these statements as measurable as possible, quantitatively, maybe qualitatively, so that in the end, you could take your thing and test it to see how well it solves the problem. And of course, what makes design iterative is after we get done testing, and then we can take what we learned from testing and redesign, right? When we get into class, it would be great if we'll have you everybody kind of share out a little bit about their experience. And so hopefully you're able to, even though we're not documenting this or following a specific design process, hopefully you'll still be able to, when you create your prototype, try this thing out, so that if you get to talking about it when we're in class next, that there's that you could tell us about that full experience of where you actually tried to utilize this thing or gave it to the demographic to utilize. So back to the design brief, we have requirements and constraints. Requirements come in two different forms. I could categorize them in requirements for form and requirements for function, right? Every technology, whether it's something you hold in your hand or it's something out there that exists digitally, or it's a system or a way of doing something, all of those could be described in terms of their form, the way they look, their aesthetics, and then also their function. Function being how they work, things like sizes, dimensions, how those things, how the person interacts with those pieces of the design. People call them subsystems if there's a technology that has multiple pieces to it or multiple components. These things could be called subsystems. So in the requirements, you have some requirements for form and function. The requirements for form are, the requirements are target a specific demographic. Let's see if I can zoom in here for us. Target a specific demographic and I think what I might ask you to do is I might put a spot where you could post a picture of your final your final prototype, and then maybe a couple sentences where you're going to write something about who the target was and the target demographic or whom, and what some of their needs and wants were that you incorporated into the ones that are already on the design brief. So we have to find a demographic. You're going to maintain the hands-free viewing functionality. So if you want to get rid of this thing, you could start fresh with the time that you have. You may just keep this and build off this, cut this up, add things to it, wherever you like, put things around. There's no constraints here about how big or how small or anything like that. So it's pretty open. But we want this thing to still solve the original problem of maintaining a hands-free, for a hands-free viewing experience. But you have to make 2 innovations to improve the form, the way it looks. It's kind of open-ended too, right? And then make 2 innovations to improve the function. And that could be for the function of the hands-free viewing experience or some other functionality that you want to add into this. Or there could either be another component or something that you incorporate into this that your demographic would benefit from or they would like to have, but it doesn't have to service the hands-free viewing experience, right? At the sake of somebody copying this, we'll just say some simple example could be, oh, if I wanted to hold a pen or a pencil on here, and I roll up a little tube of paper and affix it to the top, that could be something I could stick a pencil in. It doesn't help me with the hands-free viewing experience, but maybe it's something my demographic needs while they're around using their phone hands-free. Next, incorporate at least one moving part or feature. A lot of design challenges or quick problem solving activities will have this like ad hoc thing back-ended into there, something to try to trip you up or see how you handle it. I'm just going to leave that in there like that is to incorporate a moving part or feature. And by moving part or feature, I mean that the shark fin here in the back. Oh, by the way, how about that music on that video where the gentleman puts together the origami device? It starts off with that dubstep. Not exactly what I thought. Dubstep origami. I didn't realize they go hand in hand so well, but they do. Now lose my train of thought. Oh yeah, incorporating at least one moving part or feature. I know this wiggles here in the back, right? This wiggles, but a mechanically moving part would mean that there's two materials, 2 different components or pieces or something that are affixed somehow, and that there can be motion in some way. Does something slide in something? Does something have a pin going through it so something could rotate or spin? Does it have a piece that moves in and out? See how you handle that. And that's it for requirements. That last bullet I think I already mentioned. This thing still has to offer the hands-free viewing experience, but in such a way as to better address the needs and the wants that would be part of that are unique to your demographic. And you may already kind of see how you could take those needs and wants and you could address them through innovations to the function or innovations to the form. All right. Now, I don't expect that everybody has any kind of supplies at home. You may just have paper. In fact, if you have less materials, that might cause you to get a little more creative, right? Because necessity is the mother of invention. And when we have much less to work with, we have to get more creative. But you are open to use anything that you want. I'm not trying to get you to make something on a 3D printer or go into the wood shop and start fabricating stuff. You could just use office supplies, hot glue gun, tape, anything you have laying around. You got an old jean jacket with cool buttons and snaps and some Velcro, and when it's just sitting there in the box, you can cut some of that up and incorporate it. Anything's good. Anything is fodder for this activity. But I fully expect many people may just have maybe some tape and some, if any arts and crafts supply, maybe just some stuff in that junk drawer that's in the kitchen, So we get down to constraints here, and constraints are things you're limited to during the design process. And constraints often refer to things like you may call them resources, like, well, how many people can you have in your group, or how much time do you have, or what materials are you limited to, or what tools or machines are you limited by, or how much capital do you have, or buying power, or to get something else. What materials? How much space could this thing? How much space is your device limited to? So there's these 7 inputs of technology, and just wanted to mention that now. But a good design brief, the constraints will address multiple inputs. Here I only have 2 things for you to think about. Time. So I'm saying, hey, put an hour into each one of these, into the phone stand, do the same exact thing for a wallet, and maybe spend an hour max on each one, going through the whole thing, making it, and then going up to Canvas and putting the picture up of each one, and writing a couple sentences about your demographic and how your new device solves the problem. And then I mentioned materials, and I'm saying you could use any materials that you like, right? Last but not least, I want to mention that this is a functional prototype, which means that it's supposed to actually do what you're saying it does. It's not a model. It's not an aesthetic model. It's a functional prototype. Prototype meaning there's only one of them, right? And so what you can't do is you can't draw the solar panel on the side here with a marker right, and write solar panel on it, and then tell us that your final solution, if it sits out in the sun, will just charge up, and it could charge the phone up. Maybe somebody here could pull that off in an hour with a real solar panel, but the point I'm trying to make is that it's functional. It's supposed to do what it says it does, and incorporate those real functions. So yeah, I think that's about all I want to say here. Again, for common language, we've got a design brief, we've got background, we've got problem, requirements for form and function, and constraints. And that the demographic is made up of any grouping of people that can be classified with some similar needs and wants in this situation. And constraints are always the second part of the design brief that refers to the inputs of tech that you have for technology, the things you are limited by during your design process. Okay, so I think that's about it for this. Again, there's 2 design challenges here. Use the same design brief, but just sub in wallet for phone stand the second time around and still do the same requirements and the same constraints. Okay, I hope you guys enjoy this, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. And I really can't wait to give you all your stuff, because my basement is full of boxes. My neighbors think I'm crazy because I have a pile this big of things from Amazon coming in for the last week. And I know that Rob's coming over this weekend, and we're going to be putting these kits together. And some of them are going to stay here at my house for people to come pick up. And people who are starting to say they're going to pick them up from Rutgers, we'll go up. We'll be able to get them from Rutgers. We just haven't picked that location out yet. We're trying to pick the right spot in campus where it's going to be easy peasy for you to go in and get your stuff. And then once we know the Rutgers location, then I will make an announcement back out to everybody, say, hey, kits are ready, and could you please go back on the forum? Well, I will have added a estimated time and date for next week for when you think you come pick things up. If it's me at my house, no problem. You could probably just text message me, and I'll put my phone number up there. And if I know you're coming, I can meet you here, or I could always leave the kit out back or with my wife if I'm in here. But more likely, we're not going anywhere. And I'm probably I could be available pretty much all, like, early in the morning, late at night, whatever works for you to be able to get your hands on this thing when you need it. And Rob will be driving kids from here up to somewhere. Hopefully you can drop them right off at Rutgers, but if you can't, then it may take until Monday morning until we have a location. All right, so thanks so much for bearing with us and your patience on this, knowing that we've had to take the first few weeks here and try to restructure activities and figure out as we go what's the best use of our time until we know when the kits would be ready, and we can say with certainty, oh, now everyone's going to have these things in their hands, and they're going to be able to, once they have these, now that allows us to put the next series of activities together that go with each week. And our goal is to be able to post these up well in advance. And I think that we're in pretty good shape with that now. And the 3D printers will not be available until end of February and maybe the first week of March. So I think that's it for now. I could keep talking, but I'm going to stop. And I just hope everybody has a safe weekend wherever you are. I know in Jersey here we're getting lots of snow, and I keep thinking about you out there in those other states, where you're at, what it looks like around you. I'm curious. So looking forward to seeing you some more in class next week. And don't forget, Rob has office hours on the asynchronous weeks. That would have been last night and 2 Wednesdays from now. If you need to speak with us, of course, just get us a message on Canvas. And good luck, makers. Good luck. Don't worry if it's not good what you make. Don't criticize yourself. Don't be tough on yourself. What we're looking for is that you just enjoy yourself going through this process and see how you handle it. There's no pressure to have some perfect, awesome thing, or that that what you create shows off your skills. We're not trying to find out everybody's skills. We want to have a common experience here that we can use as that you can synthesize the readings with, to talk about all of these different things, the cognitive effects and the motivations and the benefits of maker education, and what it's like for a student and that from their perspective, and for the teacher. And so just like anything where I have kids in class, let's say for the first time I'm working with them, and creating and making is kind of new vocabulary. I want them to have the engineering habits of mind. I want them to feel like they can take risks and try new things out, be creative without feeling like they're going to be penalized or there's going to be mistakes. I want them to practice divergent thinking. I want them to know it's okay there's no one failing. It's okay. So you may have some grand idea, but you're only able to get so far in an hour, and then it's reasonable to stop because you're going to have to be doing a bunch of writing in addition. So um, no one's going to stop you from taking more time if you'd like, but there's nothing wrong with getting as far as you can up to that point and being okay with where you got, and that's what the redesign is always for. If we were documenting each step of the design process, the last step, the redesign, that's where the students get a chance to talk about what they would have done if they had more time, or the improvements that they would make based on testing. All right, so I'm going to go put this video up as soon as I can, and as soon as it's done buffering, I'll put it up there. And again, best of luck, and I look forward to seeing what you got. Have a great day, everybody. Be safe.